The countless tragedies shocked and moved Europe to action, taking in first tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands of refugees who fled for their lives. But what are the limits and how to make for a more orderly process that saves Europe's open internal borders? Hello and welcome to People First, the EPP Group's monthly program on issues with impact on people like you. Joining us to answer some of your questions is Roberta Metsola. You're from Malta. You're the EPP Group's point person on migrant issues. Malta is one of those frontline states in this crisis. The European Parliament has just approved a plan to relocate 120,000 of these refugees. What's your take on that? What's your comment?
I would start by saying that the European Parliament is leading on this issue. It is totally in sync with Jean-Claude Juncker's European Commission, and we have come to the realization that this is not a passing crisis, this is not a temporary phase, but this is a real pressing need for protection of people coming at our borders.
Okay, it's taking that stand, but we don't see any mandatory quotas for this yet, do we, for resettling the 120,000?
No, there are legal obstacles to that so far, but we have also seen in the European Commission's plan towards the end of this year to come up with a legislative proposal that would lead to mandatory distribution mechanism.
Let's take a closer look at this issue in our report before we go to some of your questions.
They've been the largest flows of migrants in Europe since World War II. More than 800,000 expected this year from conflict zones including Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. But also among them are those fleeing hardship in developing countries. Frontline states, including Greece, Italy, Spain, and Malta, have been struggling to deal with the waves of humanity. The EPP Group has proposed 4 key measures to deal with the crisis. They include sharing the burden among EU member states, a binding mechanism to distribute asylum seekers across the EU, fighting people smugglers, destroying their boats, and setting up reception centers in the countries of origin. This would create a humanitarian passage to Europe for those who are persecuted, securing Europe's borders to prevent illegal entry and preserve the Schengen Agreement's visa-free internal borders. That includes the rapid processing of migrants to determine if they qualify for asylum. Finally, the rapid and humane return of those migrants who don't get asylum. In 2013, less than 40% of the return decisions were implemented.
These are a lot of difficult issues to settle, and we saw that the Interior Minister's meeting just recently didn't really come up with a lot of results. What's your take on that meeting?
Well, it's like you have 28 member states with 28 different migration policies. We talk about being a union of shared values, but we seem to shy away from accepting that we have to be a union of shared responsibility. I have been representing Malta in different fora since Malta joined the European Union, and that has been my experience throughout these 10, 11 years. However, I'm cautiously optimistic that once I see the Parliament taking such a strong stand in favour of solidarity, once I see the European Commission leading so courageously on this issue, then there has to be a point where member states understand that this is not something that is going to go away. As I said earlier, this is not something that one member state can handle alone.
So these are important steps forward.
Absolutely.
It's not solved yet, but it's moving forward. Let's go to our first Vox Pop question from Spain that really has to do with the crux of the matter is this open internal borders issue.
Me llamo Álvaro y soy de España. Mi pregunta es para los parlamentarios europeos. ¿Qué podemos hacer para salvar el acuerdo Schengen?
Okay, so some people are saying Schengen is dead or almost. What do you think?
I'm a big believer in the Schengen Agreement. This is something that we have worked for many, many years, granting our citizens the right of free movement, a fundamental pillar of the European Union that we are very proud of.
Is that not too idealistic in this day and age?
Schengen is one of the fundamental pillars, and we need to uphold it and continue celebrating it. However, at the same time, what does Schengen imply? Schengen implies that you need effective management of your external borders.
Yes.
You need proper control of your external borders. That is what Frontex is for. That is what the possibility for member states to ensure and secure their external borders is for.
So a stronger Frontex, which is one of the things that EPP Group is calling for. What about the bottom line here? Here's another question about that. What's the price tag on all this, and who's going to cover that?
Hello, my name is Kim from the U.S., and I'm wondering how we're going to pay for all the immigrants that are coming in.
Okay, now I made clear with her, she's talking about how Europe is going to deal with that. How is Europe going to deal with this? And this is a question of burden sharing, isn't it?
Yeah, rather than burden sharing, it's about responsibility sharing. And as long as we start from the point of departure that there are persons who are eligible for protection and therefore it's our responsibility to grant them protection, then we will find the funds to do so. But at the same time, and this goes back to what the EPP priorities are, once we recognize the responsibility to give protection to those who are in need, we also recognize our obligation to ensure the swift return of those people who are no longer in need of our protection. And that ties in with how we are going to engage with third countries of origin and of transit, because we need to make a distinction between where migrants come from, where migrants flee from, and where migrants are currently seeking shelter or are currently working, waiting to come to the European Union.
To find a safe place.
How to find a safe place in order to ensure with those third countries that if you are not eligible for protection, if you are not fleeing persecution or death, you do not fall within the definition of a refugee, then you can be swiftly returned.
Okay, difficult to sell that message in the Czech Republic. Here's somebody from the Czech Republic asking, what are we going to do with these migrants?
Jmenuji se Julie Solarova a pocházím z České republiky. A chtěla bych se zeptat, proč imigranté utíkají ze své země? Proč nás ohrožují a tak?
Two questions.
Two questions.
Yeah. Why are they fleeing? I think the question there is what we see today in media news, seeing people fleeing. They would put their children on boats. They risk everything. I mean, you ask a parent of a young child, I am a parent of young children, why would I endanger my children's lives and put them on boats? The reply of these parents is because it's more dangerous on land.
Sure,
that's why they flee.
After
Why
4
do
years
they
of
endanger us?
conflict
There I am a little bit worried, because there is the pre-perception that everybody who's coming seeking protection is a danger to us, and that is a very worrying phenomenon, especially in the young people of our continent. And again, it is our responsibility to educate and say there are people in need for protection, just like we Europeans needed protection in the past.
Okay, and here's a very different issue. What about the people who profit from this, the traffickers? Here's a question on that.
Bonjour, je m'appelle André Dodin. Je suis de la région du Poitou-Charentes, à Niort. Et je vous demande si vous êtes vraiment à la hauteur pour contrer ces immigrants, leurs passeurs, leurs trafiquants.
Okay, so let's focus on the traffickers, and even the EPP group has suggested perhaps using military action against these traffickers.
The EPP has been leading in calls for the European Union to step up its action within the international fora, because you remember there are international consequences or implications legally and politically, and the EPP has been leading. Yes, let's do our very best in order to go after the traffickers and dismantle once and for all the criminal networks. I would say that I am disappointed with the reaction of other political groups in this House, where there is only one-sided arguments in order to open up our borders completely, and no reference to the smugglers, no reference to the traffickers.
Roberta Metsola, thank you very much for joining us on what's a wrenching issue for both the migrants and the Europeans. That's it for now on People First. Find out more about the activities of the largest political force in Parliament by checking eppgroup.eu. Until next time, thanks for watching.